Justine Greening.
Mr. Speaker, like many other members in this House, I've got a number of constituents who are affected by this. When one of them first came to see me in my MP surgery, I listened. It was a complex tax case. But for me, as a former Treasury Minister, it soon became clear that the way this was being handled was genuinely not the way that I had been used to seeing things being dealt with at my time at Treasury. And I think, alongside many other colleagues in this House, and I know my next-door neighbour, the Honourable Member for Wimbledon, I think we're right to be raising our concerns about what's going on today, not least because of the very personal impact it is having on thousands of people, frankly, around this country who have this hanging over them and nothing really being done to resolve the situation other than those people representing them being able to set out how much of an impact it's having on their lives. I have young constituents who are contractors who've just been unwittingly caught up in this. They did all the right things, asking their accountant, checking out whether a QC had approved a scheme. I've got an older gentleman who's caught up in it, looking at having to sell his home, and he's in his 70s and clearly has no ability to go back into the workplace to even begin to recoup some of the money that HMRC is now claiming he should pay. And I think there are a number of issues with all of this, but in the end it comes down to how we in this House and HMRC look at the concept of fairness. And fairness in relation to taxation. And what I would say is I think HMRC have simply got it wrong. And the balance that is being struck is in the wrong place. And I very much would urge the Minister, who I agree is a talented Minister, but in the end, it's these more challenging areas of policy that make or break that reputation than the day-to-day ability to be able to do a brilliant job, as others have said, on turning around constituency casework, where I think he's almost unparalleled in his assiduousness. So I do hope that he uses his talent to now find a way through this and to come up with a compromise that can bring a quick resolution. The approach being taken circumvents taxpayer protections on time limits, on HMRC inquiries, as many have said. The bottom line is, overwhelmingly, people did declare these arrangements quite transparently. They sent in their tax returns, as some have said. Some were given tax rebates. They were given no indication that HMRC were ever going to come back to these years. I will give way.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way, and I'm also an ex-Treasury Minister and her neighbour as well. Could you just say something? I mean, the unusual nature of this as well, sometimes the very large sums that are involved. One of my constituents has got £300,000 assessed on this, and although the average is 13,000, that can mask some quite big numbers involved here as well.
He's absolutely right. One of my constituents has done their own estimate. They believe that this could cost them £230,000. It's an estimate, because back in 2013-14, as they say, I was first contacted by HMRC in 2013-14 about income from just the 2008 to 10 tax years, and having accepted my appeal letter to their inquiries, I haven't heard anything from them since. So 5 years on, I still have no clear idea what HMRC believes I owe them and the real justification for it. As they say, communication from HMRC has been inconsistent and sporadic at best. In addition, and I want to come on to this in the time I have remaining, HMRC does not appear to be targeting the companies who were, and in some cases still are, providing these tax planning schemes, but rather the individuals who use them. Sadly, there are still people joining these schemes today unaware of the impact it's likely to have on them. Now, HMRC's approach to the loan charge has, I believe, been punitive rather than proportionate. It is essentially, for some constituents, grouped up to 20 years of charges and then lumped them into one big sum that they are now being asked to pay. And I want to finally finish my comments.
The roof's leaking.
With a leaky roof in the background. This has been an interesting week for other events happening whilst members have been giving speeches. I want to conclude my remarks actually on the really important area of what on earth is being done to tackle these people promoting these schemes. These are the people who have effectively, and I believe knowingly in many cases, missold schemes. They have got rich on the back of them and left the people who were part of them to then pick up the pieces. I will give way.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. Over 10 years ago, Roy Fachney and David Perrin were arrested and later convicted, non-accountants, in an accountant's tax firm, but their clients weren't told that 10 years later the HMRC might come after them. That strikes me as grossly unfair and out of time.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right. And I think it would be good for the Minister to be clearer about how many schemes HMRC is aware of, how many are currently being addressed by HMRC and tackled, how many remain unaddressed today, what penalties have currently been issued in relation to closing down these schemes, what amount has that totted up to, what action has been taken against the directors who pursued these schemes and promoted them, knowing often that they are not compliant with HMRC. Will they ever be barred from being directors in the future? They're clearly reckless and not fit, I think, to be company directors. And I think the more that we can send out a message across the industry that this behaviour is not acceptable and that actually lost revenue will seek firstly to be recouped from these businesses and companies promoting the schemes, and they're the ones at risk. That will happen first, and then perhaps second there will be more clear-cut rules for people to understand when they themselves are putting themselves at risk in their assets through participating in these sorts of schemes. Mr Deputy Speaker, it really is time, I think, that HMRC did all of the people caught up unwittingly in this loan charge issue a favour. Set out some kind of a sensible compromise that drew a line in the sand, that did not go back so far, and that treated them with some dignity and enabled them to either, where they still owe money, settle, but where not, frankly, be able to move on with their lives and get clarity on that as soon as possible.
Justine Mathers. Thank you.